Picture this, a room full of America's most elite warriors, men who had survived the toughest military training on earth, watching in stunned silence as their untouchable instructor lay flat on his back, completely disarmed by someone they had written off before she even stepped through the door. This isn't a Hollywood fantasy or a feel-good fictional tale designed to inspire. This is the raw, unfiltered account of the day Maya Rodriguez shattered every assumption, broke every stereotype, and proved that true strength isn't measured by the size of your muscles or the depth of your voice. It's forged in the fire of determination and tempered by years of relentless preparation. What you're about to read will challenge everything you think you know about limits, about what's possible when someone refuses to accept the word no, and about the moment when years of quiet preparation meet explosive opportunity. This is the story of how one woman's journey from a small Texas town to the most exclusive training facility in the military changed not just her life, but the entire culture of an institution that had remained unchanged for decades. Maya's story began long before that fateful demonstration day, rooted in experiences that would have broken lesser spirits and fueled by a fire that burned brighter with every obstacle thrown in her path. This is her story, authentic, unvarnished, and absolutely true. Maya Rodriguez learned to fight before she learned to read properly. Growing up in the rough neighborhoods of San Antonio, Texas, where her grandmother Rosa raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7, survival meant more than just getting by. It meant learning to stand your ground when others tried to take what little you had. Rosa Rodriguez was a tiny woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she commanded respect throughout their neighborhood. She had immigrated from Mexico in the 1960s with nothing but determination and a work ethic that put most people to shame. By the time Maya came to live with her, Rosa owned a small grocery store that served as the heart of their community, and she had earned her reputation as someone you didn't cross. Mija, Rosa would tell Maya as she swept the store's front steps each morning, respect is not given because you are small or because you are a woman. Respect is earned through your actions and your character. But, sometimes, before people see your character, you have to show them you cannot be pushed around. The first time Maya truly understood what her grandmother meant, she was 9 years old. A group of older boys had been harassing customers outside Rosa's store, demanding protection money that Rosa refused to pay. Maya watched from the window as her grandmother, all 4 feet 11 inches of her, marched outside with a baseball bat and faced down 3 teenagers who towered over her. "You want money from my store?" Rosa had said, her voice calm but carrying across the street. "You work for it. You sweep my sidewalk, you help my customers carry groceries, you show respect to the elders in this neighborhood. Then, we talk about payment for honest work." The boys had laughed initially, but something in Rosa's stance, the way she held that bat like she knew exactly how to use it, made them think twice. Within a week, all 3 boys were working part-time at the store, and the harassment stopped completely. Maya absorbed this lesson like a sponge absorbs water. She began paying attention to how her grandmother moved, how she positioned herself when facing confrontation, how she used her voice as a weapon more effective than any physical threat. Rosa had learned these skills during her own difficult childhood in Mexico, where being small and female meant developing other kinds of strength to survive. When Maya turned 10, Rosa enrolled her in martial arts classes at the local community center. The instructor, Miguel Santos, was a former Marine who had returned from Vietnam with scars on his body and a mission to keep kids off the streets. Miguel's dojo wasn't fancy, just a converted classroom with mats on the floor and mirrors that were cracked in several places, but it became Maya's second home. Miguel recognized something special in Maya from her very first class. While other students struggled with the basic movements, Maya absorbed techniques like her body had been waiting for this training her entire life. She practiced forms until her muscles ached, then practiced more. She studied not just the physical aspects of martial arts, but the philosophy behind them, the discipline, the mental preparation, the importance of using strength responsibly. Fighting is not about hurting people, Miguel taught his students. Fighting is about protecting what matters. Your family, your community, yourself when no one else can do it. But, before you can protect anyone else, you must master yourself. By age 12, Maya could hold her own against students twice her size. Her speed and technique compensated for what she lacked in raw strength, and her ability to read opponents' movements seemed almost supernatural. Miguel began entering her in regional competitions, where she consistently placed in the top 3 despite being younger and smaller than most competitors. But it wasn't the trophies that mattered to Maya, it was the confidence that came from knowing she could defend herself and others. This confidence grew stronger when she witnessed her first real test of her training. She was 14 when it happened. Walking home from school with her friend Carmen, they were approached by 2 men who demanded their backpacks and phones. Carmen immediately began crying and reaching for her bag, but Maya stepped forward instead. "No," she said simply, positioning herself between the men and Carmen. The first man laughed and reached toward Maya, probably expecting easy intimidation. Instead, he found himself on the ground 3 seconds later, his wrist twisted at an angle that made him scream. The second man pulled out a knife, but Maya had already moved, using techniques Miguel had drilled into her hundreds of times. The knife clattered across the pavement as the second attacker joined his partner on the ground. Maya helped Carmen gather her things, made sure both men were breathing and conscious, then calmly called the police from a nearby store. When officers arrived, they found 2 would-be robbers nursing injuries and begging to be arrested before that crazy girl comes back. Word of the incident spread quickly through their neighborhood and school. Maya found herself looked at differently, with respect from some, fear from others. Some parents complained that a teenage girl shouldn't be so violent, but Rosa supported her granddaughter completely. She protected her friend and herself, Rosa told anyone who would listen. She used exactly as much force as necessary, no more. "This is what I raised her to do." Miguel used the incident as a teaching moment for all his students. Maya did everything correctly, he explained during their next class. She avoided conflict when possible, used minimal necessary force, controlled the situation without causing permanent harm, and involved authorities afterward. This is how warriors behave. The incident also caught the attention of someone else, Master Sergeant Janet Williams, a military recruiter who happened to be in the area that day. She had heard the story from multiple sources and decided to investigate. What she found was a 15-year-old girl who combined exceptional physical skills with mature judgment and unshakable moral principles. Williams began visiting Rosa's store regularly, ostensibly to buy groceries but actually to observe Maya. She watched how the girl interacted with customers, how she handled difficult situations, how she balanced her training with school and family responsibilities. What impressed Williams most wasn't Maya's fighting ability, though that was remarkable, but her character. Maya worked in her grandmother's store after school and weekends, never complaining about the long hours or difficult customers. She maintained excellent grades despite her demanding schedule. She helped younger students with homework and continued advancing in her martial arts training. She had become exactly what her grandmother and Miguel had hoped, a strong person who used her strength responsibly. During one of Williams' visits, she finally introduced herself properly to Maya and Rosa. She explained that she was a military recruiter and that she had been watching Maya for several months. "I've been in the military for 20 years, Williams told them. "I've seen thousands of young people come through training programs. Most of them have either physical ability or mental toughness, but rarely both. Even fewer have the kind of character that makes someone worth trusting with serious responsibility. Maya has all 3. Williams explained that military opportunities for women were expanding, especially in specialized fields that required exceptional individuals. She wasn't promising anything would be easy, but she believed Maya had the potential to excel in areas where few women had succeeded before. Rosa listened carefully, asking pointed questions about training programs, advancement opportunities, and what military life would actually mean for her granddaughter. Maya stayed quiet during most of the conversation, absorbing information and thinking about possibilities she had never seriously considered. That night, Maya and Rosa sat in their small kitchen discussing the future. Rosa made it clear that the decision would be entirely Maya's, but she shared her own thoughts about the opportunities and challenges military service might provide. "In Mexico, I had no choices," Rosa said. "I came here so that your mother could have choices, so that you could have even more choices. The military might give you chances to serve something bigger than yourself, to develop abilities you don't even know you have yet. But it will also be harder than anything you've faced so far. Maya thought about Miguel's teachings regarding using strength to protect others. She considered the respect she had seen her grandmother earn through years of hard work and principled behavior. She remembered the feeling of successfully defending Carmen and herself, not just the physical satisfaction but the knowledge that her training had allowed her to protect someone who couldn't protect herself. Over the following months, Williams continued visiting and providing information about different military career paths. She introduced Maya to other women who had succeeded in traditionally male-dominated fields, arranged for her to visit local military installations, and helped her understand what serious training programs would actually require. Maya's grades remained excellent, her martial arts training intensified, and her work at the store continued, but now all of these activities had a new focus. She wasn't just maintaining her current life anymore, she was preparing for something bigger. The day after Maya's 18th birthday, she walked into William's office and announced her decision. She wanted to serve in the military, and she wanted to pursue the most challenging opportunities available to her. William smiled and began pulling out paperwork, but she also made sure Maya understood exactly what she was choosing. The road you're considering isn't just about being good at physical tasks, Williams explained. You'll be entering environments where some people won't believe you belong, where you'll have to prove yourself not just once but repeatedly. You'll face challenges designed to break people who aren't completely committed. Are you sure this is what you want? Maya thought about her grandmother facing down those teenagers with a baseball bat. She thought about Miguel's lessons regarding protecting what matters. She thought about the moment she had stood between Carmen and those attackers, knowing she might get hurt but unwilling to let someone she cared about be harmed. I'm sure, she said, and meant it completely. Williams nodded and handed her the first set of forms. Then, let's begin preparing you for something extraordinary. Maya signed the papers that would change her life, while in the background, her grandmother watched with pride and worry warring in her expression. Rosa Rodriguez had raised her granddaughter to be strong, to stand up for what was right, and to never back down from a worthy challenge. Now Maya was about to discover just how strong she could become. Basic training at Fort Benning was supposed to be the great equalizer, the place where civilian weaknesses were stripped away and military strength was forged. For Maya, it became the first real test of whether everything she had learned growing up could translate to an environment designed to break people down before building them back up. Drill Sergeant Marcus Thompson had been molding recruits for 15 years. He could spot the ones who would wash out within their first week and identify potential leaders before they recognized it in themselves. When Maya arrived with her quiet confidence and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work, Thompson made a note to watch her closely. The first challenge came during initial physical assessments. Maya's test scores placed her in the top 5% of all recruits, male or female. Her push-ups, sit-ups, and distance runs weren't just good for a woman, they were exceptional by any standard. But Thompson had seen physically gifted recruits crumble when training intensified, so he reserved judgment. Maya's bunkmate was Jennifer Walsh, a former college athlete from Minnesota who had joined the military to help pay for medical school. Jennifer was tall, blonde, and had the kind of natural athleticism that made everything look effortless. Initially, other recruits assumed Jennifer would be the standout performer while Maya would struggle to keep up. This assumption lasted exactly 3 days. The breaking point came during their first major field exercise. Each recruit was required to carry a 60-pound pack through 12 miles of rough terrain, then immediately complete combat scenario drills. The Georgia heat was oppressive, humidity making every breath feel like work, and several recruits had already fallen behind or dropped out completely. Jennifer, despite her athletic background, began struggling around mile 8. Her pace slowed, her breathing became labored, and Maya could see exhaustion setting in. Without hesitation, Maya redistributed weight from Jennifer's pack to her own, adding 15 pounds to her load while never slowing their pace. "You don't have to do this," Jennifer gasped, grateful but embarrassed. "We finish together or we don't finish at all," Maya replied, her voice steady despite carrying 75 pounds through terrain that was challenging with standard weight. They completed the march in the top third of their group, and Jennifer never forgot the lesson about teamwork and sacrifice that Maya had demonstrated without ever talking about it. But Maya's real education began during hand-to-hand combat training. Sergeant Paul Martinez was the unit's combat instructor, a former Army Ranger who had seen action in Iraq and Afghanistan. Martinez prided himself on teaching practical fighting skills rather than theoretical martial arts, and he was known for his brutal but effective training methods. During their first session, Martinez demonstrated basic defensive techniques using volunteer recruits. When he called for someone to practice with, Maya stepped forward immediately. Martinez, a man who stood 6 feet 3 inches and weighed over 200 pounds, looked down at Maya's 5'6" frame and assumed this would be a quick demonstration of proper technique. "Just try to grab my wrist," Martinez instructed, positioning himself casually. Maya moved with fluid precision that surprised everyone in the room. Instead of simply reaching for his wrist, she feinted left, pivoted right, and executed a complex takedown that Miguel had taught her years earlier. Martinez found himself on the ground, controlled but unharmed, while Maya maintained perfect balance and position. The room fell silent. Martinez got up slowly, more surprised than embarrassed, and studied Maya with new interest. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "Community center in San Antonio, Sergeant. Been training since I was 10. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Show me what else you know." What followed was an impromptu demonstration that lasted nearly an hour. Maya exhibited techniques from multiple martial arts disciplines, each executed with precision and control. She sparred with several volunteers, including Martinez himself, holding her own against opponents who significantly outweighed her. More importantly, Maya demonstrated something that impressed Martinez even more than her technical skills: she knew how to teach. When other recruits struggled with basic movements, Maya could break down complex techniques into simple steps, helping slower learners master skills that had frustrated them for days. Martinez approached Maya after that first session. "I've got a proposition for you, Rodriguez. I'm short-handed for assistant instructors, and you've got skills most of these recruits need to learn. Interested in some extra responsibility?" Maya accepted immediately, understanding that this opportunity would provide advanced training while helping her fellow soldiers improve their capabilities. She began staying after regular sessions to work with struggling recruits, developing teaching methods that accommodated different learning styles and physical limitations. Word of Maya's abilities spread throughout the base. Officers began dropping by combat training sessions to observe this unusual recruit who could outfight most experienced soldiers while maintaining the kind of leadership qualities typically seen in much more seasoned personnel. Colonel Sarah Hayes, the base's highest-ranking female officer, made a point of meeting Maya during the 6th week of training. Hayes had been following reports about the recruit who was reshaping how hand-to-hand combat was taught at their facility. "Sergeant Martinez tells me you're considering special operations tracks after you complete basic training," Hayes said during their meeting. "Have you thought about exactly which direction you want to pursue?" Maya had been thinking about little else. Military service offered opportunities she had never imagined growing up in San Antonio, but the most appealing options were also the most challenging. Special operations units represented the pinnacle of military training and responsibility, but they also maintained standards that few people could meet. "I want to push my limits, Colonel. Whatever track will challenge me most and let me serve at the highest level possible." Hayes smiled. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. I'm going to introduce you to some people who can help you understand what highest level really means." The following week, Hayes arranged for Maya to meet Captain David Chen, a Navy SEAL who was visiting the base for cross-training exercises. Chen's reputation preceded him. He was known as one of the most technically proficient fighters in special operations and had successfully completed missions that remained classified years after they occurred. Chen observed Maya's combat training sessions for 2 days before agreeing to a private meeting. When they finally talked, he was direct about both opportunities and challenges. "SEAL training is designed to eliminate people," Chen told her bluntly. "Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. The failure rate exceeds 90%, and that's for candidates who are already exceptional by most standards. For women, the challenges are even more significant because you'll be entering a culture that hasn't traditionally included female operators." Chen explained that recent policy changes were opening special operations roles to qualified women, but implementation was still evolving. Maya would be among the first women to attempt certain training programs, which meant she'd face scrutiny and skepticism that male candidates never experienced. Here's what I'll tell you honestly, Chen continued. Based on what I've observed, you have the physical skills and mental toughness required for special operations. But being qualified and being accepted are different things. You'll need to be better than good enough, you'll need to be undeniably excellent. Maya listened carefully, asking questions about training specifics, deployment realities, and long-term career implications. Shen answered everything honestly, neither encouraging nor discouraging her but providing the information she needed to make an informed decision. That night, Maya called her grandmother from the base phone. She described the opportunities being presented and asked for Rosa's advice on whether to pursue the most challenging path available. Mija, Rosa said after listening to everything, when I was your age, people told me a small Mexican woman could never own a successful business in America. When your mother wanted to become a teacher, people said she should be satisfied with factory work. You have inherited stubbornness from a long line of stubborn women who refused to accept other people's limitations. Rosa paused before continuing. But I will tell you something important. Choose challenges because they will make you stronger and help you serve others, not because you want to prove something to people who doubt you. Their doubts are their problem, not yours. Maya thanked her grandmother and spent several hours walking around the base, thinking about everything she had learned and experienced over the past several weeks. Basic training had confirmed that she could excel in demanding military environments. Combat instruction had revealed abilities she was still discovering. Conversations with experienced officers had opened doors to possibilities that exceeded her original expectations. The next morning, she informed Colonel Hayes that she wanted to pursue special operations training, specifically requesting assignment to the most demanding programs available to her. Hayes nodded approvingly and began making calls that would change Maya's military trajectory completely. 3 weeks later, Maya graduated from basic training with honors, placing first in her class academically and athletically. Martinez presented her with a special commendation for her work as an assistant instructor, noting that she had helped improve combat training scores across their entire unit. But Maya's real celebration came in the form of orders that arrived the day after graduation. She had been accepted into preliminary training for naval special warfare, with the possibility of advancing to SEAL training if she successfully completed initial requirements. Jennifer Walsh, who had become Maya's closest friend during basic training, was both proud and concerned. "You're really going to do this?" she asked as they packed their belongings. "I'm going to try," Maya replied. "If I fail, at least I'll know I gave everything I had to something worthwhile." As Maya prepared to leave Fort Benning for the next phase of her training, Sergeant Martinez pulled her aside for a final conversation. "Rodriguez, I've trained thousands of soldiers over the years. Most of them were good people who became good soldiers. A few became exceptional soldiers. You're something different, you're going to change how people think about what's possible. That's a big responsibility, but I believe you're ready for it." Maya thanked Martinez for his guidance and friendship, then headed toward transportation that would take her to Naval Special Warfare training facilities in California. She carried letters of recommendation from every officer she had worked with, but, more importantly, she carried the confidence that came from succeeding in her first real test of military life. During the flight to California, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that conversation in her grandmother's kitchen months earlier. She had proven to herself that her childhood training could translate to military success, that her ability to learn and teach could benefit others, and that her determination to serve at the highest level was more than just youthful ambition. But she also understood that basic training, challenging as it had been, was only preparation for what came next. SEAL training would test everything she thought she knew about her own capabilities, and failure remained a very real possibility. As the plane descended toward San Diego, Maya looked out at the Pacific Ocean and thought about the deeper waters she was about to enter, both literally and figuratively. Everything in her life had led to this moment, but everything important still lay ahead. The Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, sat like a fortress between the Pacific Ocean and San Diego Bay. Maya arrived on a gray Monday morning when fog obscured the water and muffled sound, making the base feel isolated from the rest of the world. This isolation, she would soon learn, was intentional. Everything that happened here was designed to separate those who belonged from those who didn't. Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres greeted the newest group of candidates with the kind of smile that promised suffering. Torres had been through SEAL training himself 15 years earlier, survived multiple combat deployments, and now held the responsibility of determining who had what it took to join one of the world's most elite fighting forces. "Look around," Torres told the assembled candidates. "Statistically, more than 90% of you will quit before completing this program. Most will quit in the first month. Some will quit today. This isn't a failure of character. This training is designed to exceed human limitations. Only those who can transcend normal human responses to stress, pain, and exhaustion will continue." Maya stood in formation with 23 other candidates, the only woman in a group of men who ranged in age from 19 to 32. Most were already experienced military personnel, Marines, Army Rangers, Navy personnel seeking advancement into special operations. All had exceptional physical and mental qualifications just to be considered for the program. The first week consisted of baseline testing that would establish each candidate's starting point and identify immediate weaknesses. Maya's swimming scores placed her in the top third of the group, despite competing against men who had significant size and strength advantages. Her running times were even more impressive, and her performance on strength-based exercises consistently exceeded minimum requirements. But physical capabilities, Maya quickly discovered, were only the foundation. SEAL training was designed to test mental resilience under conditions that would break most people regardless of their athletic abilities. Sleep deprivation began immediately. Candidates were awakened at random times throughout the night for training exercises, inspections, or simply to ensure they couldn't establish normal rest patterns. Meals were rushed and inadequate. Every task was performed under time pressure that made success difficult and perfection nearly impossible. During the second week, Maya faced her first major crisis. The infamous drown-proofing exercise required candidates to swim 50 meters, tread water for 5 minutes, then swim another 50 meters, all while their hands were tied behind their backs and their feet were bound together. Maya had always been a strong swimmer, but this exercise removed every technique she relied on. She had to overcome not just the physical challenge but the panic that came from being helpless in deep water. The first time she attempted the exercise, she nearly drowned and had to be pulled from the pool by instructors. "Rodriguez," Torres said afterward, his voice neutral but not unkind. "You've got two choices. You can ring the bell and go home with your head high, there's no shame in recognizing your limits. Or you can figure out how to complete this exercise, because it won't get easier and you won't get special consideration." Maya spent that night thinking about her grandmother facing down teenage thugs, about Miguel's teachings regarding mental strength, about every moment in her life when she had been told something was impossible. She also thought about Jennifer Walsh and how sharing weight during their forced march had made both of them stronger. The next morning, she approached Torres with a request. "Chief, I need extra time in the pool. I'll come in early, stay late, whatever it takes, but I need to master this skill." Torres studied her for a moment. "Extra training time means less sleep, which means you'll be even more exhausted for everything else we're going to throw at you." "I understand, Chief." "All right, Rodriguez. Pool opens at 0500. Be there." Maya began arriving at the pool 2 hours before official training started each day. She practiced breathing techniques, worked on body positioning, and gradually extended the time she could spend underwater with her limbs restrained. Slowly, she developed the mental calm necessary to overcome her body's panic responses. Other candidates noticed Maya's extra efforts. Some respected her dedication, while others whispered that she was getting special treatment or that the instructors were going easy on her because she was a woman. Maya ignored the whispers and focused on improvement. After 10 days of extra practice, Maya successfully completed the drown-proofing exercise on her first attempt. Her time wasn't the fastest in the group, but she finished cleanly and calmly. More importantly, she had demonstrated the kind of problem-solving and persistence that Torres was looking for in potential SEAL operators. "Good work, Rodriguez," Torres said quietly as she climbed from the pool. But this was the easy part. He wasn't exaggerating. As training intensified, Maya discovered that physical challenges were often secondary to psychological warfare designed to make candidates quit voluntarily. Instructors would single out individuals for extra criticism, create impossible scenarios where success seemed unattainable, and maintain constant pressure that wore down even the strongest personalities. Maya became a frequent target for special attention, though she gradually realized this was actually a positive sign. Instructors didn't waste time trying to break candidates they believed would quit anyway, they focused their efforts on those they thought might actually succeed. During the fourth week, Maya faced a scenario that tested everything she had learned about leadership under pressure. Her team was assigned a navigation exercise that required reaching a series of checkpoints in mountainous terrain while carrying equipment that weighed more than any of the team members. Halfway through the exercise, one of Maya's teammates, a former Marine named Jackson who had been skeptical of her abilities from the beginning, collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. The team faced a choice: abandon Jackson and complete the mission, or sacrifice their mission to help a teammate who couldn't continue. Maya made the decision immediately. We carry him out together, and we complete the mission. Nobody gets left behind. Jackson protested weakly, insisting that the team should continue without him. Maya ignored his protests and organized the remaining team members to distribute his weight and equipment while supporting his movement. The navigation exercise became exponentially more difficult, but Maya's leadership kept the team moving forward. They reached the final checkpoint 20 minutes after the official deadline, technically failing the mission. But, when instructors debriefed the exercise, they praised Maya's decision-making and leadership under impossible circumstances. Torres said in front of the entire team, "You failed the mission parameters but succeeded at something more important. SEALs don't leave teammates behind, even when it costs us tactical advantages. Good work." Jackson approached Maya that night during their brief free time. His attitude had changed completely from skepticism to respect. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "I thought you were here to prove something about women in combat. I didn't realize you were here for the same reasons as the rest of us, to serve at the highest level possible." Maya appreciated his honesty but didn't make a big deal of his change in attitude. She had learned that respect was earned through actions, not words, and that proving herself was an ongoing process rather than a single achievement. The halfway point of training brought the most infamous challenge in SEAL preparation, Hell Week. For 5.5 days, candidates would receive less than 4 hours of sleep total while completing continuous physical and mental challenges designed to push human endurance beyond normal limits. Hell Week began on Sunday night with sirens, explosions, and instructors screaming orders in the darkness. Maya and her remaining teammates, the group had already shrunk from 24 to 16 candidates, were immediately thrust into ocean swims in near-freezing water, log-carrying exercises that lasted for hours, and obstacle courses that seemed designed more for punishment than training. By Tuesday morning, Maya had been awake for over 40 hours with only brief minutes of rest between exercises. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced, her mind struggled to process simple instructions, and every movement required conscious effort. 3 more candidates had quit, unable to continue despite their previous determination. Wednesday brought the worst conditions yet. Candidates were required to complete beach runs while carrying telephone poles, swim through surf that knocked them down repeatedly, and perform calisthenics in sand that made every movement more difficult. The instructors maintained constant pressure, criticizing performance and suggesting that quitting would end the suffering immediately. Maya found herself struggling more than she had at any point in her life. During a particularly brutal log-carrying exercise, she stumbled and fell, unable to lift her end of the heavy timber. Jackson and 2 other teammates immediately adjusted to support her weight without being asked, returning the kind of teamwork she had shown them earlier. "We finished together," Jackson said, echoing Maya's words from weeks earlier. Thursday night was when Maya nearly broke. During a surf passage exercise, she was separated from her boat crew and found herself alone in dark water, disoriented and hypothermic. For several minutes, she genuinely believed she might die, that her pursuit of SEAL training would end not in graduation or voluntary withdrawal but in drowning in the Pacific Ocean. But, instead of panic, Maya found herself remembering her grandmother's voice: "Respect is earned through your actions and your character." She had come too far and sacrificed too much to quit now, even if continuing meant risking everything. Maya regrouped with her boat crew and completed the exercise. When they reached the beach, Torres was waiting with a rare expression of approval.
"Rodriguez, you just demonstrated something important," he said.
"When you're scared, cold, tired, and alone, you don't quit.
You find a way to complete the mission. That's what separates SEALs from other people." Friday morning brought the final Hell Week challenge, a timed run that would determine which candidates had enough left to continue training.
Maya's legs felt like concrete, her lungs burned with every breath, and her vision occasionally blurred from exhaustion. But she had learned to push through physical limitations by focusing on larger purposes. She thought about Rosa working 18-hour days to build her business, about Miguel training soldiers who would protect others, about all the people who had supported her journey to this moment.
Maya finished the run in the required time, along with only 11 other candidates from the original group of 24.
When Hell Week officially ended Saturday morning, Maya found herself among the survivors who had proven they could function under conditions that exceeded normal human tolerance. But she also understood that completion of Hell Week was just permission to continue training, it wasn't graduation from anything. Torres gathered the remaining candidates for a brief ceremony acknowledging their accomplishment. "You've proven you can suffer without quitting," he told them. "Now we begin teaching you skills that matter.
Everything up to this point has been about determining whether you belong here.
Now we find out what you're capable of achieving."
Maya looked around at her fellow survivors, men who had become genuine teammates and friends through shared struggle.
She realized that her original goal of proving that women could succeed in SEAL training had evolved into something more important, proving that she personally could meet the standards required for this level of service. The next phase of training would focus on technical skills, advanced weapons handling, demolitions, medical training, and tactical operations. Maya was exhausted but excited to begin learning the specialized capabilities that would make her an effective SEAL operator. As she prepared for her first full night of sleep in nearly a week, Maya called her grandmother from a payphone near the barracks. Rosa's voice sounded relieved and proud when Maya described successfully completing Hell Week. "Mija, you sound different," Rosa observed. "Stronger, but also calmer.
Like you know something about yourself that you didn't know before." Maya considered this observation. "I think I learned that my limits are further away than I thought. And that when I reach them, I can choose to go further anyway."
"That is good learning," Rosa agreed. "But remember, strength is only valuable when it serves something bigger than yourself. Make sure you never forget why you are doing this difficult thing." Maya promised to remember, then hung up and headed toward her bunk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to develop capabilities she was still discovering. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, she could rest with the confidence that she truly belonged among America's most elite warriors. The weeks following Hell Week transformed from tests of endurance into intensive technical education that would turn Maya and her fellow survivors into specialized operators. The physical challenges continued, they were still SEALs in training, but now each exercise served the specific purpose of developing skills they would need in real-world missions.
Advanced weapons training began immediately.
Maya learned to handle equipment she had never seen before, specialized rifles, underwater weapons, demolition devices, and communication systems that could function in any environment. Her years of martial arts training gave her an advantage with weapon retention and close-quarters combat, but she had to master entirely new skills related to long-range shooting, explosive placement, and tactical coordination.
Master Chief Robert Kane oversaw weapons training with the precision of someone who had spent 20 years perfecting deadly techniques.
Kane was legendary among SEALs for his marksmanship abilities and his success in training operators who went on to complete crucial missions around the world. During Maya's first precision shooting evaluation, Kane observed her technique carefully. Her fundamentals were solid, but her results were inconsistent at longer ranges where physical differences between her and larger operators became more significant. "Rodriguez," Kane said after reviewing her targets, "you're fighting your equipment instead of working with it. Your rifle was designed for someone with longer arms and greater body mass. We need to modify your setup so your natural abilities work for you instead of against you." Kane spent extra time helping Maya adjust her rifle configuration, modify her shooting stance, and develop techniques that maximized accuracy despite her physical proportions. Within 2 weeks, her shooting scores improved dramatically, placing her among the top performers in her class.
But Maya's greatest challenge during this phase wasn't technical, it was navigational.
SEAL operations required the ability to move through any terrain, day or night, and reach precise locations without electronic assistance. The navigation training took place in mountains, deserts, and dense forests where getting lost could mean mission failure or death.
Maya's initial navigation attempts were disasters.
Despite her excellent physical conditioning and growing technical skills, she repeatedly became disoriented during land navigation exercises. On 2 occasions, she had to be rescued by instructors after missing checkpoints by several miles.
The problem wasn't mental. Maya could read maps and use compass bearings as well as anyone.
But she lacked the intuitive sense of direction that seemed to come naturally to many of her teammates, who had grown up hunting or hiking in environments that developed spatial awareness. Chief Torres noticed Maya's struggles and arranged for specialized training with Petty Officer First Class Maria Santos, a Navy intelligence specialist who had developed reputation for teaching navigation to SEAL candidates who struggled with traditional methods. Rodriguez, Santos explained during their first session, "You're trying to navigate the way men navigate, using compass bearings and map references as primary tools.
Women often have different spatial processing abilities that can be more effective once you learn to trust them."
Santos taught Maya to pay attention to environmental cues she had been ignoring: wind patterns, subtle changes in vegetation, the way sound carried differently in various terrains. She also taught Maya to create mental maps that incorporated these sensory details rather than relying primarily on written information. The breakthrough came during a night navigation exercise in mountainous terrain north of San Diego.
Maya was tasked with reaching 3 checkpoints across 15 miles of rough country, all in complete darkness.
Instead of focusing primarily on her compass and map, she paid attention to how the air smelled different at different elevations, how the sound of her footsteps changed on different types of ground, and how the direction of wind shifts indicated changes in topography. Maya completed the exercise in the top third of her class, and, more importantly, she felt confident rather than anxious during the movement. Santos had helped her develop navigation skills that played to her strengths rather than forcing her to compensate for weaknesses.
"Good work," Santos told her afterward. "You just learned something that will keep you alive in the field. Trust your instincts, they're better than you think." As technical training progressed, Maya excelled in areas that surprised both instructors and fellow candidates.
Her medical training scores were exceptional, partly because her careful nature made her excellent at emergency procedures that required precision under pressure. Her underwater demolition work was remarkably creative, finding solutions to explosive placement problems that utilized techniques her larger teammates couldn't employ. But Maya's greatest strength emerged during tactical planning exercises. When presented with complex mission scenarios, she consistently developed approaches that were both innovative and practical. Her plans took advantage of team members' individual abilities while accounting for variables that others often overlooked. During one particularly challenging exercise, Maya's team was tasked with rescuing hostages from a building while neutralizing multiple threats and avoiding civilian casualties. Most teams approached the scenario with conventional tactics that relied on overwhelming force and speed.
Maya proposed a different approach.
She identified structural weaknesses in the target building that could be exploited for access, developed a timeline that used local civilian activities as cover for team movement, and created contingency plans that accounted for weather conditions and multiple failure scenarios.
"Rodriguez," said Lieutenant Commander James Patterson, the officer overseeing tactical training, "your plan assumes higher risk for the assault team but significantly lower risk for civilians and hostages. Explain your reasoning." Maya walked through her tactical analysis, explaining how traditional approaches might succeed in eliminating threats but could result in unnecessary casualties. Her plan was more complex but offered better outcomes if executed properly. Patterson studied her proposal carefully. "This is graduate-level tactical thinking, Rodriguez. Where did you learn to analyze scenarios this comprehensively?"
Maya thought about her grandmother studying every customer who entered their store, Miguel teaching her to read opponents' intentions before they moved, and years of observing how small advantages could be leveraged into larger successes. I learned to pay attention to details that might matter later, sir. And I learned that sometimes the harder path leads to better results. Patterson nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need in our operators. Good work. Word of Maya's tactical abilities spread among instructors, who began using her plans as examples for other candidates. This recognition was gratifying, but it also increased pressure and scrutiny. Maya understood that being noticed could be both an opportunity and a burden. The pressure intensified when Captain David Chen, the SEAL officer who had first encouraged Maya to pursue special operations training, arrived at Coronado for advanced instructor certification. Chen had been following Maya's progress through official reports, but he wanted to observe her development personally. Chen attended several training exercises, watching Maya's performance and interaction with teammates. After a particularly demanding underwater demolition exercise, he requested a private meeting with her. Rodriguez, your instructors tell me you're performing at the top of your class in most areas, Chen said. More importantly, they say you're making everyone around you better. That's a rare quality. Chen explained that Maya's training results were being watched by senior Navy leadership who were evaluating the integration of women into SEAL teams. Her success or failure would influence future policy decisions that would affect other women seeking special operations roles. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, Chen continued, but I want you to understand that your performance here matters beyond your own career. You're pioneering something important. Maya appreciated Chen's honesty but felt the weight of representing all women rather than just proving her own capabilities. She asked him how to handle this additional responsibility. Focus on being the best SEAL candidate you can be, Chen advised. Don't try to prove that women belong in special operations, just prove that Maya Rodriguez belongs in special operations. If you succeed on your own merits, you'll open doors for others naturally. Chen's visit coincided with Maya's most significant training challenge yet: advanced tactical insertion exercises that would test everything she had learned about technical skills, physical conditioning, and mental resilience. These exercises simulated real mission conditions where failure could result in operator death or capture. The first exercise involved helicopter insertion into hostile territory, followed by a 30-mile movement to a target location where Maya's team would conduct simulated reconnaissance and extraction. Weather conditions were deliberately challenging: high winds, limited visibility, and terrain that offered few concealment options. During the helicopter insertion, equipment malfunctions forced Maya's team to adjust their plan mid-mission. Their primary landing zone was compromised, communications equipment failed partially, and one team member suffered an injury that limited his mobility. Maya found herself in a leadership position when the designated team leader became disoriented during the insertion. Drawing on her tactical planning experience, Maya quickly assessed available options and made decisive calls about route changes, equipment redistribution, and team roles that would allow them to complete their mission despite multiple setbacks. She used her navigation skills to guide the team through unfamiliar terrain while maintaining the timeline necessary for successful extraction. The exercise culminated in a simulated firefight where Maya's team had to protect their wounded teammate while calling for emergency extraction under hostile conditions. Maya's performance during this final phase demonstrated abilities that exceeded her instructor's expectations. Rodriguez, said Master Chief Kane during the after-action review, you just conducted yourself like an experienced team leader under conditions that would challenge veteran operators. Your decision-making was sound, your tactical execution was flawless, and your team accomplished their mission because of your leadership. Kane's praise meant more to Maya than any previous recognition. She had proven not just that she could meet SEAL standards, but that she could exceed them in situations that mattered most. As advanced training neared completion, Maya reflected on how much she had changed since arriving at Coronado months earlier. She had developed technical skills she couldn't have imagined, discovered physical capabilities that went beyond her previous understanding of her own potential, and gained confidence in her ability to lead others through life-threatening situations. But, perhaps most importantly, Maya had learned to trust herself completely. She no longer questioned whether she belonged among elite operators. She knew she had earned her place through the same demanding standards that every SEAL had to meet. The night before final evaluations, Maya called her grandmother from the base phone. Rosa's voice was filled with pride and anticipation as Maya described her progress through training. "Mija, you sound like a different person than the girl who left San Antonio," Rosa observed. "Not different in character, but different in confidence. Like you know exactly who you are now." Maya considered this observation. "I think I learned that I can become whoever I need to become to serve something important. And I learned that my limitations were never as fixed as I thought they were. That is the most important learning of all," Rosa agreed. "Now finish strong, and make sure you remember where you came from when you reach where you are going." Maya promised to remember, then prepared for the final phase of training that would determine whether months of preparation and sacrifice would result in achieving her goal of becoming a Navy SEAL. Everything she had worked for now depended on her performance during final evaluations that would test every skill she had developed and every lesson she had learned. Final evaluations week arrived with the weight of 9 months of preparation behind Maya and the promise of SEAL qualification ahead. Only 8 candidates remained from the original 24 who had begun training, and each would face comprehensive testing of every skill they had developed during their time at Coronado. Maya's individual evaluations went exceptionally well. Her marksmanship scores placed her second in the class, her underwater demolition work earned perfect marks, and her navigation exercises were completed flawlessly. But the most important test would be her final tactical leadership evaluation, a complex scenario designed to reveal how candidates performed under pressure when lives depended on their decisions. The scenario was brutal in its simplicity. Maya would lead a 4-person team in rescuing hostages from a fortified position while neutralizing threats and avoiding civilian casualties. But, unlike previous exercises, this evaluation would include active resistance from instructors playing hostile forces, equipment failures designed to test adaptability, and time pressures that made careful planning impossible. Maya's team consisted of Jackson, the former Marine who would become one of her closest allies, along with Peterson, a former Army Ranger, and Williams, a Navy electronics specialist. All 3 men had proven their abilities throughout training, but this exercise would test their willingness to follow Maya's leadership in a high-stakes situation. The briefing was intentionally limited. Maya knew the basic layout of the target building, the approximate number of hostages and threats, and the timeline for extraction. Everything else would have to be determined during the mission itself. "Rodriguez," said Master Chief Kane before the exercise began, "this evaluation isn't just about your technical abilities. We're testing your judgment under pressure, your ability to lead experienced operators, and your decision-making when lives are at stake. Treat this like a real mission, because your performance here will determine whether you become a SEAL." Maya gathered her team for planning. She had 30 minutes to develop an approach that would maximize their chances of success while minimizing risk to hostages and civilians. Drawing on everything she had learned about tactical analysis, she worked with her teammates to create a plan that utilized each person's strengths while building in contingencies for likely complications. The target building was a 3-story structure that had been configured to replicate real-world mission conditions. Intel suggested 6 hostages were being held on the 2nd floor, with an unknown number of threats distributed throughout the building. Civilian actors were positioned nearby to simulate non-combatant presence that would complicate engagement decisions. Maya's plan called for a coordinated approach using multiple entry points, with her team moving through the building systematically to clear threats while protecting hostages. Jackson would take point on room clearing, Peterson would handle electronic surveillance, Williams would manage communications, and Maya would coordinate overall movement while maintaining tactical command. The exercise began at dawn with Maya's team moving toward the target building under simulated hostile observation. Immediately, things began going wrong in ways designed to test their adaptability. Their primary entry point was blocked by obstacles not mentioned in the briefing. Communications equipment experienced intermittent failures, and intelligence about threat locations proved to be incomplete. Maya adjusted her plan on the move, redirecting her team to alternate entry points while maintaining coordination despite communication problems. Her navigation training proved invaluable as she guided the team through unfamiliar interior spaces while keeping track of their position relative to known hostage locations. The first floor clearance went smoothly, with Jackson's room-clearing skills and Maya's tactical coordination working effectively together. But, as they moved to the second floor where hostages were located, they encountered resistance that exceeded their expectations. Instructors playing hostile forces engaged Maya's team with simulated weapons fire that forced them to take cover and reassess their approach. Maya realized that their original plan would result in unacceptable risk to hostages, so she made the decision to modify their tactics mid-mission. Jackson, Peterson, provide covering fire while Williams and I flank left, Maya commanded through their compromised communication system. We'll create a diversion that draws threats away from the hostage room, then, you move in for extraction. The maneuver was risky because it split Maya's team and required precise timing to avoid friendly fire incidents. But, Maya's tactical training had taught her when calculated risks were preferable to certain failure, and her team's months of working together had built the trust necessary to execute complex movements under pressure. Maya and Williams successfully drew hostile attention away from the hostage location, allowing Jackson and Peterson to reach the civilians and begin extraction procedures. But, as they prepared to move hostages to safety, a new complication emerged. One of the instructors playing a hostile force had positioned himself to block their primary escape route. This was the moment that would define Maya's entire evaluation. She could choose a safe approach that might result in mission failure, or she could take personal risk to ensure her team and the hostages could escape successfully. Maya chose action. She approached the hostile position alone, using skills Miguel had taught her years earlier in San Antonio. Instead of relying on weapons or overwhelming force, she employed hand-to-hand combat techniques to neutralize the threat quickly and quietly. The instructor playing the hostile force was Master Chief Kane himself, 6 feet 2 inches of muscle and 20 years of combat experience. He had been chosen for this role specifically to test whether Maya could handle a physical confrontation against someone with significant advantages in size and strength. What followed lasted less than 10 seconds but would be talked about at Coronado for years afterward. Kane moved to block Maya's approach with the confidence of someone who had never been outmatched in hand-to-hand combat. He expected a conventional attack that would allow him to demonstrate the physical advantages male operators typically possessed. Instead, Maya moved with the fluid precision that had characterized her martial arts training since childhood. She feinted right, pivoted left, and executed a complex takedown that utilized Kane's own momentum against him. Before Kane could respond or adjust, he found himself on the ground with his weapon removed and Maya in a position to neutralize him completely. The entire exercise area fell silent. Instructors who had been observing from various positions stopped what they were doing to process what they had just witnessed. Maya had disarmed one of the most respected hand-to-hand combat instructors in naval special warfare using techniques that none of them had ever seen before. Maya immediately helped Kane to his feet and returned his weapon, maintaining the professional composure expected during training exercises. But Kane's expression had changed from confidence to genuine surprise and respect. "Where the hell did you learn that?" Kane asked, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet exercise area. "San Antonio, Master Chief. Community center martial arts classes and a grandmother who taught me that size doesn't determine the outcome of a fight." Kane nodded slowly, then made an announcement that surprised everyone present. "Exercise complete. Rodriguez, your team successfully completed the mission with 0 casualties and maximum efficiency." That was textbook special operations leadership under pressure. But Kane wasn't finished. He addressed the gathered instructors and candidates with unusual directness. "I've been training SEAL candidates for 15 years, he said. "I've seen thousands of people attempt this program, and I've watched hundreds of good operators develop into great ones. What Rodriguez just demonstrated represents something I've never seen before: the ability to overcome significant physical disadvantages through superior technique, tactical thinking, and absolute confidence in her abilities." Kane paused, looking directly at Maya. "Rodriguez, you didn't just complete that exercise successfully. You changed how I think about what makes an effective SEAL operator. Your performance here proves that strength comes in many forms, and the most dangerous opponents are often those who are underestimated." The other candidates began applauding, but Kane raised his hand for silence. More importantly, Rodriguez demonstrated something that can't be taught: the willingness to take personal risk to ensure mission success and team safety. That's the defining characteristic of every SEAL I've served with who made a real difference in the world. Word of Maya's performance spread quickly throughout the naval special warfare community. Captain Chen, who had been observing the evaluations, immediately called senior Navy leadership to report that the first woman to complete SEAL training had not just met standards but had exceeded them in ways that would influence future training programs. That evening, Maya received notification that she had successfully completed all requirements for Naval Special Warfare qualification. She was officially a Navy SEAL, the first woman to achieve this designation, but, more importantly to her, she had earned it through the same demanding standards that every SEAL had to meet. The graduation ceremony was small and professional, reflecting the serious nature of the responsibilities Maya and her fellow graduates would soon assume. Admiral Patricia Johnson, the highest-ranking woman in Naval Special Warfare, traveled from Washington to personally present Maya with her SEAL Trident, the symbol that marked her as qualified for the most demanding missions the Navy could assign. Rodriguez, Admiral Johnson said during the ceremony, "Your achievement here represents more than personal success. You've proven that excellence has no gender requirements, and you've opened a door that other qualified women will walk through because of your courage and determination." But the moment that meant most to Maya came when Master Chief Kane approached her after the official ceremony. He handed her a small package that contained a worn martial arts manual. "This belonged to my father, who taught hand-to-hand combat to Marines during Vietnam," Kane explained. "I want you to have it because what you demonstrated during that final exercise reminded me of what he always said: the most important weapon a warrior carries is the one between their ears." Kane paused, then added something that surprised Maya completely. "Rodriguez, I'm recommending you for Advanced Instructor certification. Your techniques could improve how we train every SEAL who comes through this program. Would you be interested in teaching others what you know?" Maya accepted Kane's offer immediately, understanding that teaching would allow her to multiply her impact by improving the abilities of future operators. But she also knew that her real journey was just beginning. Earning SEAL qualification was permission to serve, not an endpoint in itself. 3 days later, Maya called her grandmother from her new quarters at the Naval Special Warfare compound. Rosa's voice was filled with pride and emotion as Maya described the graduation ceremony and her new responsibilities. "Mija, I always knew you were strong," Rosa said. "But I am proud that you used your strength to help others succeed, not just to prove yourself. That is the difference between power and leadership." Maya thanked her grandmother for everything she had taught her about standing up for what mattered, then shared her plans for advanced training and instructor duties that would keep her at Coronado for at least another year. "Abuela, I want to make sure that other women who come after me have better preparation than I did. And I want to make sure that every SEAL, male or female, has access to techniques that could save their lives in the field." Rosa's approval was immediate and enthusiastic. "That is exactly what you should do, Mija. You break down the door so others can walk through it, but then you help them succeed once they are inside." As Maya prepared for her next phase of service, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from her grandmother's grocery store in San Antonio to becoming the first female Navy SEAL. Every challenge she had faced, from defending Carmen against attackers to surviving Hell Week to disarming Master Chief Kane, had prepared her for responsibilities she was only beginning to understand. Maya Rodriguez had achieved something that military experts had said was impossible. But, more importantly, she had proven that determination, proper training, and absolute commitment to excellence could overcome any obstacle. Her story would inspire other women to pursue their own impossible goals, but it would also change how the military thought about strength, leadership, and the unlimited potential of those who refused to accept limitations others try to place on them. The girl who had learned to fight in a San Antonio community center had become the woman who would help redefine what America's most elite warriors could achieve. And her greatest contributions were still ahead of her.